Welcome back to another episode of Marvelman901. So today I'm gonna talk about Dazzler, X-Factor, Cable, X-Men and Wonder Woman. So I'm gonna start off with Dazzler, who you can see in Dark Phoenix from 2019, but only for a short bit, however. This is a very interesting character. Her real name is Alison Blair and she was born in Gardendale, Long Island. She was introduced in X-Men 130, later on got her own series as well. She's pretty interesting. As I said, she's naturally a mutant, and before becoming an X-Man, she was basically this disco queen. Basically singer, actress, dancer, stuff like that. She used her abilities to create this kind of light show which kind of dazzled everyone. Anyway, her abilities is basically that she can change or transform sonics, that is sounds, into light. Naturally, you can imagine the light shows that she could create by that. Later on, as she had basically trained with the X-Men and evolved her abilities, she could even focus the light into powerful lasers. A lot of things happens over the years, and eventually she works very closely with Longshot in Mojo World and actually births Shatterstar. Shatterstar we can see in X-Force, naturally. So, I'm gonna move on to X-Factor 104 from 1994. This is basically continuing from the previous issue where Malice possessed Havoc's body, and now she uses this incredibly powerful body and incredible powers to try to kill Polaris. So they fight like mad, basically. Pretty nasty fight, and well, naturally the fight between these two basically gets out. Valerie Cooper in X-Factor headquarters basically learns of this and sends the rest of the X-Factor over there to basically figure this whole thing out. Before they get there, however, pretty interesting surprise here actually on the last page, that Mr. Sinister and his Nasty Boys basically shows up to, well, basically challenge Malice in a way. We don't really know why he's there, but I mean, it's Mr. Sinister, so it's basically gonna be a pretty interesting reason. So the next issue we're gonna talk about is Cable issue 13 from 1994. This is the second part of Fear and Loathing. So basically, Lee Forrester and Cable are in the Everglades, basically running away from this mysterious storm that basically just turned up out of nowhere and is very powerful and all that. They basically ends up in a cabin where this old guy called Desmond basically invites them in, takes them in basically. It's a little bit weird though. Apparently he knows who they are. I mean, sure, Cable is fairly recognizable, but Lee, not really. She looks normal. Just a normal person. Another guy comes in as well, Sonny, apparently maybe a son, something like that. Anyway, Desmond basically uses his abilities, some strange abilities, to force Cable and Lee to relive their worst nightmares, basically hallucinate horrible things. Cable sees the future before he came to the past, or whatever. Basically sees his clone, Strife, sees himself becoming Strife, something that he is very scared of. And then Lee sees her dead father, who then realizes that he is dead, so he shoots himself in the head yet again. Pretty traumatic. Naturally, whole Cyclops things comes up as well with Lee, and later on Magneto, as she knew as Magnus. A lot of horrible things. And it turns out that this Desmond guy is actually Despair, this demon guy who tries to basically break them through despair. Cable, however, realizes that the only way to basically break this is basically to bring in happiness, or break the spell in a way. And he kisses Lee and actually breaks the spell. They manage to defeat Despair this way. However, Sonny basically rips off his face, and apparently he is Belasco, and he goes by a completely different way with this, because he explains to Cable that they have a common enemy and basically needs to work together. So that ends that issue, and we'll continue in the next one. Back to 1966 now with X-Men 24. So some different things happened in this one. Basically they evolved the whole dynamic here by Jean having to go to college now, as she had naturally graduated at the X-Men basically. While in college he meets Ted Roberts, so he's naturally introduced in this issue. He will later on become, not famous maybe, but I mean he's basically a half villain, half hero kind of guy called Cobalt Man later on. Anyway, we also introduced to a new villain called Locust. So Jean realizes pretty quickly who this Locust guy is, so I'm gonna jump right into that. He is August Hopper, apparently an entomology professor, well, ex-professor actually, as he had lost his professorship and basically was ridiculed for his wild theories, which he basically managed to enact. So he naturally wanted revenge on all of them, but he needed basically to test things out first. So he basically managed to enlarge a lot of bugs, grasshoppers and beetles and stuff like that, and naturally the X-Men had to go there and fight them. Eventually though, after a little bit setbacks, Jean joining them this time, she basically messed with Locust's antenna, which basically forced the bugs to go for Locust instead. So naturally the X-Men saved Locust's life, and he realized that maybe he went a little bit wrong here. So he basically decides to turn himself into the police. Alright, so we're gonna go to DC now. From 1989, Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 26. So this is now the crossover of Invasion. So basically two things happen. First we have the Olympian god called Hermes, who tries to make amends after this battle with Ixion, and he basically uses his magical powers or whatever to basically make things better, rebuild things. People kind of first are against him naturally, as he basically brought disaster upon them, but eventually they kind of like that he kind of rebuild things. However, this guy called Creeper did not like this. Creeper is a kind of weird guy, as you might know, and he naturally just goes for attack. He attacks Hermes, and Hermes is a little bit weakened by the whole using a lot of his powers basically to make things better. Yeah, basically they fight. So Wonder Woman now. She and Captain Atom basically went off to save Steve Trevor, who was captured by Durlans. These Durlans were some of the invaders who basically wanted some information on the military, as Steve Trevor obviously had a fairly high position there. Eventually, Wonder Woman and Captain Atom managed to bring down the airplane which held Steve Trevor and the Durlans, and the Durlans managed... Basically, the Durlans can change their appearance, basically mimic people. So naturally, there's a little bit of hide-and-seek, trickery, stuff like that, with Wonder Woman and Captain Atom while they're looking for Steve Trevor, but eventually they defeat the Durlans and save Steve Trevor, and then naturally Wonder Woman shows up at Hermes' side to stop the Creeper as well. So that's that for today. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Do subscribe and share this if you like this. And naturally all of this is Marvel's creations and DC's creations. I'm only telling the stories. So have a good day and stay safe.